a video that I just did. There's a highlight up already in my shorts talking about vocal fry and its use and how easy it is compared to other forms of screams and stuff like that. If you are someone that wants to push into an alternative sound for your music and everything like that you're doing. Well, so I decided after thinking about it, I was like, you know what? I should talk about vocals, period. So, as we know, there are different things out there. So, and yes, I consider screams a part of vocals. It is very much in the vocal aspect of music. Nobody else should be doing them. It would be the vocalist. Yes. So, I count that. Rap is also another one. I am not a rapper, but I do and have used it in the past as a part of my music. And so, and no, I'm not someone that has put out there and sold music and stuff like that. I just have original stuff that I have done, and I have used rap as a part of it. But here's the other things too, is knowing when to do also smooth vocals and where it will work best, as well as knowing when to add a rasp to your voice and to affect those tones and when in your music it will be best. And ultimately, what emotion you're trying to cause for your music. Yes, because ultimately, when you use different tones and different sounds, it produces a different emotion. Because when you're going smoother and softer, it can sound so lovely. It can make you feel so sad. Or it can even produce a happy thing. You know, I love you so much, my baby. It can produce different feelings based off of what tonation and how you're speaking things in your vocals and how you're kind of pushing the emotions into it. So, with that and everything like that, depending on what you're wanting, if you're wanting that smooth tone and everything like that, which, by the way, helps with certain movement in verses, by the way, because one of the things with one of my songs that I have done, Living Dead, with smoother vocal tones, I'm able to produce this kind of a tone. I can do a, it's another moment, it's another time. It does a more free flow feel. And so that is the best time to kind of use smooth vocals, is if you're wanting something that kind of has a movement and a pace, and it can kind of provide a feeling and lead you into something. Whereas if you try to do the same thing and try to use a rasp in those kind of vocals in that moment, you would provide a different feeling. Whereas, like, when I did the smooth tone, right? It's another moment, it's another time, it's kind of describing something. But if you come at that a little harder, it's another moment, it's another time, it provides a different feeling, right? It feels different. It doesn't feel the same. It feels like you're coming in with a lot more angst and a lot more anger, and it has a different feeling. It feels different, and it has a different message depending on how you come at those vocals. Well, at the same time, it can be the very same with how you come at things, because, like, one of the things I described, I'm not a rapper. I will never be a rapper. I don't sound good when I rap, but I have used it and I have done it myself because nobody else could. So, in that same song, the chorus, by the way, is rap. So I come in, crazy life we choose to live in, all roped in, it's plain to see, right? It's very fast paced. And it's because I want it to feel chaotic. I wanted it to feel like there is a lot of shit that's just being vomito because there's so much there. And so I used that in order to be like, I'm venting all this crap. All this shit's there. Well, here's the other part of that. You can throw in other things. Like, for me, I use vocal fry and I'll push it in there in different moments. So in another part of that very same rap, there's a line where it goes, "Lest they get in my dignity, I lose another piece of me." Right? So you can throw those vocal fries and those screams in there. And then at the end of the line, Counting demons with every sin, always watching they won't give in. Oh! You can throw different things in there, so you have these different tonations and different things, and you can build layers, and so your music becomes more and more of a folded up thing. It's almost like, I don't know if any of you know forging and blacksmithing and stuff like that, but you get those layers and then you sit there and you hammer them in the end and you have this built together song that has become one lovely, beautiful Damascus steel piece, right? And so that's ultimately what you want. You want to build all this stuff and have all these layers. And it sucks so much that I don't have my very same friends and people anymore and stuff like that. So it is very much, if you have people and you can work with different people. One of the other things too is I love harmonies. And harmonizing based off of the different tones and everything like that, based off of using, so like if you got someone who's really, really good with baritone or even bass vocals and can sing those lower tones, which is not my strong suit. I can do them, but it's not my strong suit. And when you do them, by the way, if you do bass and baritone and you're really trying to practice those low ranges, you want to learn the perfect amount of vibrato for your voice. Because if you do not sustain with vibrato, and I don't mean go over the top. If you go over the top, you're going to sound like a goat. So don't do it. Don't do too much. But you want to sustain it. So another one that I have called Foggy Nights. I start off with very baritone ranges, right? So I come in, wake up to find it's just another day. You sustain just enough with the vibrato so where it holds the note so it doesn't drop. Because when you're in those ranges, the notes will drop really, really fast. And it's just because unless you're someone that just naturally has a really deep voice, it's really hard to sustain those notes. Especially if you're someone like me who's naturally a tenor. I'm naturally someone that sings up higher. So in the ranges of, it's another moment, it's another time, that's my natural range. That's where I normally am. So for me to sing down in those ranges of, you know, looking out the window, so dark and dreary, is really, really difficult. I have to really try and focus on sustaining those notes because that's just out of my normal range. I can do it, but it is crazy for me. And hello, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to ignore you. I'm just on a rant. I'm going right now, so I appreciate you being here. Love it that you're here. And I hope you all learned something from this today. Now, another thing is with that, so in that very song, Foggy Nights, when I start off like that, I start, you know, wake up to find it's just another day, never been happy, living this way. And then it goes into tenor ranges, and it's actually at the higher spots of tenor ranges. And here's where the tonations of going up and popping from those baritone vocals into those, it goes into like this, and I can do it either smooth or I can do it with the rasp, and it has a difference of feeling based off of what I do. So I can pop into the, will I ever find happiness? Or I can give it a little bit of an edge. And if I give it an edge instead of doing the pure where it's like, will I ever find? I can go, will I ever find happiness? In a crazy world, there's such a mess. Oh, right? Or I can do it very pure. Will I ever find happiness in a crazy world? There's such a mess. Oh, it sounds different based off of how I change the tone and the rasp. And then crossing into chorus and other things, depending on if you want the rasp, you want an edgy thing, or you want to be more pure, it can be kind of similar in this range. It can be, take this pain away from me. Or I can add an edge and it has a different feel. Take this pain away from me. So it changes based off of how much inflection and what I do with the vocals. It can change the whole message and how the song feels, right? And hello, glad to have you here. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. Karina Molina, is that it? I hope I pronounced that right. Glad to have you here. I'm sorry if I butchered that. I try to read them as best as I can. Sometimes I get them wrong. I apologize. So, it really can change how a song feels based off of what you're doing. And also, if you're someone that wants to kind of really have a full on alternative sound, play with different stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. And honestly, the more you play around with different forms of music and blending them together, the more creative you're going to be, and you're going to bring people in because they're going to be like, holy shit, that's so different. That's so unique. It's not what we're used to. And that is actually okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And the more you play around with different things, the more unique your sound is going to be. So, like I said, you could play around with rap. You can just be pure vocals all the way through. You can add an edge to your voice. You can throw in the screams. There's nothing wrong with, ending something, and you can even go from pure. You can be like, oh, I'm trying to think on the fly here. So you could be like, like shine of glass that cuts right through. You can do different things, or you can hit that even harder. The cut straight through, and end on the screams. Yeah, so you can do different things, and it gives it a different feel. It pushes a different message based off of how you come into the different lines of your song. Now, one of the other things too is knowing your overall limitations. I'm sorry, is that Kai Slinger? I hope that that's right. I apologize if I got that wrong. Glad to have you here. Hello. I don't know what you mean by echo. Are you talking about reverb? But anyways. So, one of the other things too is, if you can, find a place that has really amazing acoustics. And if you don't know what acoustics are, actually it plays into what he's speaking of with echo, if I am correct. You will find that certain areas will bounce back your sound when you're singing and stuff. So you want to find a place that has really amazing acoustics when you are first trying to get into kind of figuring out your sound and everything like that, because you'll sound the best. And so then once you gain that confidence and you go, okay, now I'm figuring stuff out for myself, you can start pushing into different things and going, okay, well, let's try this. Let's try this. And you'll get better because you'll start figuring yourself out. It's really just learning who you are as an artist. And I will say this over and over and over. Anybody, and I do mean anybody, can learn to sing. Now, I am not saying that everybody will sound amazing when they sing, but everybody can learn to sing in some basic format. It is something that can be learned. It is no different than any other instrument. It is something that takes practice, and as you practice, you will get better. Now, there are the very natural talents out there, obviously, that can just naturally do this. They hear it, whatever. I actually originally was self-taught. I literally listened to, I don't know if you guys have checked out my channel and stuff like that. I love Linkin Park. I always have. And one person that I loved trying to mimic at first when I was younger was Chester Charles Bennington. And so when I heard his voice and the different things that he was doing and everything like that, I was like, you know what? I think I can do things like that are very similar. I think I can do some of those tones and how he sings. And so when I started teaching myself before I started going through actual classes and things like that to start learning some of the different techniques, I started just listening to Chester Bennington. And I started going, okay, I can do this. And so when I heard him doing some of his songs, I started just singing along. And so then some of his melodies and things like that made sense. And I saw how he was doing things where he would come into his verses very smooth. So, like, for a great example, his song or their song, Numb, when he comes in very soft. He comes in, I'm tired of being what you want me to be. But then when he comes into his other stuff, especially in the chorus, it's a little raspier, right? He comes in, life becomes so numb, I can't feel you there. He has a little bit more of an edge and a rasp. And so that's knowing the difference in different parts of your songs as you're building your material, knowing, okay, this is where I kind of want to come in softer. I kind of want to build the emotion. And then when I get into the chorus, that's where I really want to hit people and be like, I have some shit that I'm trying to relay here. I'm pushing my message now at this point, and that's where you'll come in a little heavier. Or, if you're someone that likes to throw a little wrench in there, you can do it the opposite. You can hit the chorus softer. That could be your moment where you're showing vulnerability. You can do a different thing there, and it'll give a little bit of a different feel and a different message. You can really play around with your own unique material. Um, I've been playing around with different stuff and everything like that. I've been really trying to build this one, and I'm kind of hitting a speed bump with it because I have so many ideas of how I want to form it, and it's just I'm hitting that block, and it's so hard with this one because it's such an amazing idea, and it's about kind of like broken thoughts and memories and stuff like that. And it could be so amazing if I could just get all the coalesced pieces of how I want it to form and sound and be. And I know that I want there to be that soft spoken bit and everything like that, and then come in with, the legs out of glass, the good strength of me, shit like that. And so I think it could be really, really cool, but it's just piecing it all together. But it's no different with any of your guys' stuff. And I hope that, you guys can kind of come forward and be like, hey man, I've got this really great idea. I've got this and stuff like that. I'd love to hear some of your guys' stuff. I know some of y'all have to have some amazing vocals and amazing things you can do and have some great things that you're formulating. For me, I know that based off of different points and different sections of a song, it's going to be better to use different forms of vocals. Now, one thing that I want to address is for females, women really, really, really usually struggle in the lower ranges, right? And so it can be really, really tricky for them to slip into the lower tones. Because typically women, and I'm not saying all of them there are women that can sing low ranges. They can sing in the baritone and bass vocals, and you know what? They sound pretty cool when they can. I've heard some of them, and it is a really cool and unique sound. And some of the things that they can do with their vocals when they can do that is beautiful and amazing. It's really, really cool. But they struggle most of the time because a lot of women you typically are in the range of alto and higher. They don't typically go much lower, right? And so it takes a lot of work. And same with men, and typically in reaching the higher registers. It takes a lot more air support, and typically you have to kind of play around a little bit. You kind of have to use a mixture, especially with men that sing in the lower registers and everything like that, trying to pop into tenor and higher, especially the higher tenor ranges, because sometimes they have to slip into kind of like a half chest voice and a half falsetto to be able to reach those. For me, I've always been able to kind of hit those. I can kind of like, away from But even there, if you kind of hear, I'm kind of ghosting a little bit. It's only when I give it a rasp that I'm full chest voiced into that. When I go into the way from me, that's the only time I really use the chest voice because I can, because I'm trying to push that rasp in my voice. To whereas when I do lighter, like I said, you can kind of hear I'm ghosting it a little bit. I'm not quite full on chest voice there, so it's a lot lighter. It's a the way from me. It's a lighter tone. And with that too is one of the other cool things that you can do with a rasp in your voice is it can give you some very like you can do cool like bouncy kind of lyrical things. So another part of one of my songs was the happiness is found in bliss in a world that's full of shit. That kind of thing, right? You can kind of get a bounce a little bit. And you can kind of play around with those different things. So then it allows you to kind of. How do I describe it? It gives you a little bit of a bounce to your music and your lyrics, but it also lets you kind of have that edge. It gives you that kind of that angst and that anger. And so then you can push into a kind of a finale of the section. And I love to use that kind of stuff as a bridge because then that'll lead into a buildup to where you can kind of end on a scream somewhere. So you can be like, someone grab my tourniquet, I'm in the clouds. And then you can go into like a softer section where you're going into the outro and sing a little lighter. So take this pain away from me. And then go back into your kind of chest voice and everything. God, I can't talk. Chest voice with a little bit of ghosting. Take this pain away from me. And it'll allow you to kind of play and give those different feelings of emotions after you just did something that was really angsty and hard. You can kind of bring it back, kind of soften it, and then come back with a full chest voice, and it'll just be like, whoa, okay, he's kind of playing with the emotions here. They're changing it up. And so it can really affect the overall feel of your song through the different sections just because you're changing it up. You're doing different tonations. Now, one of the other things, like I was talking about earlier, do not overdo your vibrato. When you do vibrato, you want to literally do it only enough to sustain the note and then let it hold. You don't want to sit there and be like, ah, when you're doing a vibrato. It sounds like a goat and you're going to sound terrible and people are going to make fun of you. They will literally come on to anything you ever make and create and they will be like, this person sounds like a goat. They sound really, really bad. So, when you're sustaining a note, you can hold it out. Do enough, drop it off, let it go. Do not keep trying to sustain with a vibrato. You want to just do enough, sustain this note, and let it go. Do not sit there and keep nah, because you'll sound really weird and you sound like a goat and people are just going to hate it. Do not do that. Do not do that to yourself. People will hate your stuff. They really, really will. And I always find it funny that there are certain artists that have got big that do that. Because it's just like, it really comes down to when they sing their stuff and everything like that and they're recorded and stuff. It comes down to the fact that they recorded their material and they edged their voices to sound decent enough. But I can't listen to certain artists because they overdo vibrato. It's really ridiculous, and it really kills the whole vibe of everything. So just don't do it to yourself. But just know you can slip into a lot of different things. You really, really can. And one of the things that I've been really trying to work on is using a small growl when I do certain things. So I can come in and kind of hit that, and I can pop into things. If you can use that, not only can you kind of growl into a note like a, you could also do that into a scream. So it helps with different pushing and notations into different sections of your music based off of how your tonation is. And so it allows you to change up things so much, and you can really, it's kind of like you're a musical shapeshifter if you can do a lot of different tonations and sounds and be all over the spectrum musically, because then you're able to do so much different stuff with any material you make, because you can do all sorts of different sounds. It allows you to basically be a musical shapeshifter. You can do whatever you want. So, I suggest taking whatever your strengths are and try and push those into different, not only notations, but also go into different spots that are not your comfort zone. If you're someone that's naturally a tenor or a baritone, or if you're a woman, you're an alto, soprano, higher, and everything like that, practice in different areas. Because you can find that if you can get yourself to where you feel a little more comfortable in those areas, you can create some very unique sounds. Men, try practicing going into the higher registers. Because if you can get to where you get a little bit stronger doing so, you can create some really cool and unique sounds. Women, naturally, usually you're up higher, yes? If you can get yourself to where you can sing lower and everything like that, and more of the baritone bass ranges and stuff like that, which is quite impressive, by the way, you can create some really creepy and eerie sounds. I have heard some women that can do that, they can drop into those low tones and they can create some very eerie overtones. And you can create some very cool alternative sounding music if you can do those and affect that. And same with men. If you can pop up into higher registers and do things, you can create some very interesting tones that can be really, really cool for different forms of music. And so just practice, play around and stuff, and try dropping and changing into things. Like I said, my weak spot is dropping into lower tones, but I practice it. And I've learned that using a little bit of more vibrato on those notes allows me to sustain them. So I could drop down a little bit more and I can hit those. Wake up so fine. It's just another day. I can sustain them if I use enough vibrato. Not over much. Like I said, you can even sound like a goat that is using a bass voice. Don't do it. Don't do it. So, but when you are trying to train yourself and everything like that, just know if you use just the right amount of vibrato, you will be able to sustain the notes and you can carry the notes out longer. Now, depending on how long you are holding out the note, you will want to use vibrato a little bit more to sustain. But know that you have to cut off the vibrato at a certain point. Otherwise, you will sound goaty. You just will. So it really comes down to how long you sustain the note and how much vibrato you're going to use. It's, you really have to just play with it. And if you can't determine that you're sounding goaty with how much vibrato you're using, that's part of the problem. Okay, just understand that. If you don't know that you sound like a goat with how much vibrato you're using, there's a problem there. Now, the other side of it too is you can use too little vibrato, and if you're using too little of it, you're not going to sound right, because one of the things that vibrato does when it's used properly is it helps you to hold that note at the proper key. If you use too little, there's too much of a chance that you'll slip, usually flat. Usually you'll drop the note and it'll go flat and it'll sound horrible. Some people, weirdly, and I do not understand how this happens, but some people, if they don't sustain properly with vibrato, they go sharp. I've never understood how that works. Typically, the note drops, but some people go sharp. all the power to you, I guess. I don't understand it, but it happens. So, and of course, you don't want that to happen, right? You don't want your note going the wrong ways because people are going to hear it and they're going to be like, that doesn't sound right. That sounds off. That sounds weird. And they'll know naturally you're off key because it just doesn't sound right. Because naturally, when you sing a song, it's in a certain key. So if you're not sustaining properly with vibrato and it drops flat, or like I said, on the rare occasion, some people go sharp, which is really strange. People are going to know because they're going to have listened to the whole rest of the song and your whole fluid movements through your verses and stuff, and they're going to hear where the key's at. Yes, naturally, even if someone doesn't understand anything about music and stuff like that, just listening to a song, they'll hear where it naturally kind of is and where it should be. And so when you are not sustaining notes properly and everything like that and it drops one way or another, they're going to just naturally feel like something's not quite right and they're not going to like your song. So you're going to have to be able to sustain your notes properly with the vibrato to make sure that it stays on key, and so it sounds good throughout your whole song, so then everybody's like, oh, okay, yeah, this sounds great. They're into your material. So just know that's really all it really comes down to. But I gotta applaud all of y'all though that are rappers, because I just cannot do it, man. I can't. I sound terrible. I do. I'll admit it. I mean, my best I got is freaking, like, crazy life we choose to live in, all roped in, it's plain to see. That's all I can do. I ain't a rapper. I'm not good. I've used it. That's all I've really done. I've had to use it because nobody else could. But it has its place. Just like anything else, alternative crosses into what is now called nu metal, or, well, has been called nu metal for a while. But anyways, sorry, I don't know why I said now, but it crosses into those territories, and you can use a lot of different sounds together to really do a lot of cool stuff. And one of the other things too is finding different people that use different forms of music, different sounds and stuff. Get together and be like, hey, I've got a badass idea. One of the coolest things that I've ever seen is people taking different forms of music and piecing them together to make a unique sound. That is one of the coolest things ever, guys, because you can literally take things that really have nothing to do with each other. I mean, you could take, like, freaking... One of the weirdest things I've ever seen was literally, like, rap met kind of like rock with, like, bluegrass. It was the most unique shit I'd ever heard, and actually it was freaking amazing. So you can take some really interesting shit and blend them together and make some really cool sounds. So do not be afraid of doing these different things and stuff like that. But first, you gotta learn who you are as an artist, where your strengths are, what you can do. Anyways, I appreciate everybody who has been here. I love y'all. I'm going to end it here, but like I said, just know you. Learn who you are as an artist, what your strengths are, and you will make some amazing material. But it's just knowing when to use smooth vocals, raspy vocals, where it's good to have rap if you're going to use rap, where it's good to add vocal fry. Because like I said, this will be my last little finishing statement. When you have a moving verse and you want something that's very free-flowing, it's usually a lot better to have smooth vocals. So something in the line of, it's another moment, it's another time, it's another day inside your life, right? You want something that's kind of smooth because it kind of flows, it moves. Whereas when you're using a rasp, that's usually where you're trying to add a little angst, a little anger, a little feeling. You want people to understand that you are feeling some deep emotions. And so usually where that comes in is something where you are saying something that's very serious. So, like, let's use Misery and Death, the chorus. Misery and death is all that you know, you're trapped in your own mind, drawn in a lie. You see, it gives that emotion, it gives that angst, that feeling of just, I'm pissed off and I want everybody to know. That's the moment when you should use it, is in those moments. Whereas, like I said, in verses, typically you want it a little more free-flowing. And you could do that in tenor ranges or whatever. So like with Living Dead, it's another moment, it's another time. Whereas Misery and Death is lower. Manacles of deception, self-sedative while kept, cover mountains of escape. You know, that kind of thing. You can kind of free flow with smoother vocals, whereas the rasp tone to your voice should be for choruses. That should be where you hit them in the gonads, right? You want them to feel it. So, anyways, that's where I'm going to leave you guys. I love y'all. I hope this helps you kind of understand where best to kind of put different sounds into your material to build the message that you ultimately want. Love y'all. Jack the Stripper out.